Hello everyone, you've got Marcel here. I'd like to share something of a story with you. Picture in your mind for a moment the typical young man, late teens, early 20s. He works hard, pays his bills, dresses nice, and works out well enough to look decent. Overall, characteristically, he is a good man. He contributes to society and is appreciated by all those around him, at least those that matter to him. Then one day, on a somewhat seemingly average day, he interacts with a woman at the wrong time. Maybe it's the wrong time for him, maybe it's the wrong time for her. And that simple, unintentional interaction sets his life spiraling down. Suddenly, people don't want to interact with him as much. People don't respond to him as well as they used to. His colleagues, his friends don't speak to him in the same way, and he can't figure out why. One day his boss approaches him about a situation that happened previously at work. Apparently, he had made one of the other employees very uncomfortable because he was being creepy. People like to wield words as weapons sometime. And the better weight that a word has, or the more that it's been twisted to have weight in society, the more they tend to want to use it. You guys all know the words I'm talking about, but the one I'm focusing on today is creepy. In essence, a lot of things in society are ran around a concept of emotional tone. By that I mean people, and mostly females, those around them are judged in their sense of character, actions, more by a feeling. They might argue that it is something of a sixth sense, but it's not. It's just how perception is put out by others, and when people have an opinion at enough frequency, there becomes this sort of a tone that a person carries around with them. A vibe, if you will, that may have had nothing to do with that person's actions in of themselves, but rather just what people say, what women say, people talk. I think at some point in every man's life, eventually he gets accused of being creepy. In the story from just a moment ago, all the man had done was say hello to the wrong person at the wrong time and got reported for it. I've always felt that the concept of creepy used by women is more a means of describing any form of unwanted attention. It's an extraordinarily fine line between creepy and cute. It doesn't even matter if the guy was desirable or not in general. If he was someone of interest to the woman, then he won't appear creepy. It's only when he's not. Flowers, love notes, and even a nod hello can fall on deaf ears when it comes to someone who doesn't want the guy's attention. I always really hated that growing up. See, from my generation, there wasn't really any of this Nazi nonsense. There were occasionally false accusations, but they didn't come up to the degree that they do nowadays. But I do distinctively remember seeing a lot of my friends, even myself at times, being called creepy when there was even possibly no romantic intent at all. It was all relative to the woman. There were even people around that disagreed, but it was only her word that it happened that mattered. One would think that being rude or cross or short with women would help, and to a degree it honestly did. It's really hard for someone to be called creepy when they're being a jerk, which is ironic. There are certainly creepy guys out there in the world, as well as there are creepy people in general, though far more often than not, the person in question is actually just a normal, even a good quality man. I made an observation, though, the other day where fate, perhaps the universe, has a sense of karmatic alignment. There's a balance that occurs in nature, even in the sense of an advanced society. You see, when you consider these young men that go up to these attractive, possibly older, possibly younger women, basically at random in the great scheme of things, and they show them attention or validation, and the women have to shoot them down. At least in their minds they do. But by making it the action of the man being something less than appropriate or creepy or undesirable in his own actions, she doesn't have to take agency for herself for having to say no. The responsibility is on him for not being something that she would desire more, or even being what he is. Most of us already know that, though. What dawned on me is that eventually, as these women age and get experiences through the world, you know the ones I'm talking about, eventually they get to a point where they're going to be less attractive. And assuming they're the kind of person who bases their value on their looks and appearances, use their look and appearance to wield the things that they want in life, which means they're going to be interacting with men on a romantic or sexual level to some degree, right? In a sense, live by the sword, die by the sword. There will, guaranteed 100%, come a day when they approach someone that is not going to be interested in them. When they've become long in the tooth, let's say, just to use an old fun term. The crow's feet have stretched across their eyes. How is that going to come across to this young, successful, well-off man when this haggard old woman comes up to him and says, "Hey, you want to go out? You want to do something?" As an act of desperation, because the men just don't come up to her as much as they used to, if ever. But of course, he's going to say no. And in all honesty, the reason? That's just really creepy. Depending on the guy and his interests, of course, but isn't the concept of that having just an old woman, and I'm using the term old relatively, because to everyone that's different, having her, whoever she is, come up and hit on a guy, isn't that kind of creepy? Not to say that that perception of creepy has anything really to do with her quality as a person at all. The point is eventually that day will come. See, every woman, whether she wants to acknowledge it or admit it, eventually will get red-pilled in her own way. You see, beauty and youth are a finite resource, and they expire very quickly. And if that's the only thing the woman stands on for her survival, then the foundation of her livelihood crumbles as quickly as the foundation on her face. So what am I getting to with all of this? What's the point in this video? There was a time in my life when I resented a woman for doing this sort of thing to me, whether or not she just hinted that I was creepy behind my back, reported me, not to say that it happened all that often, the actual reports, though I imagine for guys that are blue-pilled out there today, it probably happens a lot. Even if she tainted my reputation amongst my friends, I hated that in a lot of ways. I took it very personally because I worked hard on my character and the qualities that I brought to society in general. It's a lot of work to be good, and to have that shattered, to have that broken down by someone, the audacity, the smugness of it. It was infuriating. The point of this, if it's not enough to point out that that's not accurate, sometimes it's not enough to hear that what they said wasn't true, that the guy is not creepy, that he is a good man, that resentment doesn't just go away by the realization that she was wrong. Let's assume here, for the sake of this, that she was wrong and that the guy wasn't actually being creepy, because I would wager that 95% of the time, he wasn't being creepy at all. To anyone who's experiencing that, recognize that these people, these women who treat others that way, eventually they will get theirs. There's no point whatsoever in wasting the energy at resenting them, because that kind of person has a ticking clock on their shoulder. So it's important to let go of that frustration and put the energy into more important things that are personally productive. See, energy, time, motivation are also finite resources, and they're very precious. We all, in a sense, have our own ticking time clocks. Though the difference between someone who's enlightened, red-pilled, or recognizes society in general, and someone who is ignorant, never realizes it, and will ultimately fail, is the willingness to acknowledge the reality of the situation. The twisted part of it being that the woman's reality isn't real. Her perception, in the sense of the guy's perspective, should be irrelevant. It can affect his life, it can affect his well-being and his reputation, but it's irrelevant to his quality of being, who he really is. Now, the only way to avoid that, her spreading this false creepy facade, and I don't want to hear any of this nonsense about these guys that are getting accused of being creepy actually being creepy, because any guy, no matter how alpha, no matter how cool or suave, could be called creepy if he spoke to the wrong woman. The only way to avoid it is to stop pursuing the women. Make it clear, make it obvious that there's no interest there, mostly by not giving them the attention that they so badly crave, but are quick to punish men for giving to them. So in a nutshell, as a summary, at least in this context, do not ever resent someone for attacking one's character, within reason of course. Learn from it, Walk away from that behavior or from them in general and realize that eventually that mindset will be the greatest punishment they could ever do to themselves. In essence, just go your own way. Let me know what you think of all this down below. Have you ever been approached by someone and found it profoundly creepy? I'm sure that most of us have. I want to hear your thoughts. Either way, thank you everyone. This has been Marcel. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more. And for those who are wondering, the game playing in the background was Dying Light by Bethesda on the PS4. It felt really appropriate.